Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the SOULKATION podcast. I am your host, Logan Renee. I have the honor of having Dorinda Walker. Did I say that right?
You did.
She is the author. She is an author. She's a motivational speaker, a cultural strategist, award-winning marketer. She's the CEO of the Cultural Solutions Group. She has generated a combined amount of $100 million in life insurance and annuity sales by leading campaigns and community engagement initiatives. She was awarded Houston's top 30 woman in business, and you've probably seen her in Essence, Huffington Post, Black Enterprise, Rolling Out, and Jet, and that's just to name a few, okay? She's done a lot of amazing things. Welcome to the SOULKATION podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I wouldn't want anyone else here but you. So I'm going to give you a short story of how I came to know who you were.
Okay.
So in 2017, I was at Guy's Glamorous Girls. Do you remember
I
that?
remember, yes.
Yeah. Amazing conference. And I like to watch people just from your energy, how you were interacting with the women, everybody that you were on panel with. It seemed very genuine. It seemed very natural. You were not coming there to put on a performance, honey. You was like, this is my story. Take it, dance with it, leave it, whatever you choose. You know, this is who I am. And I remember that. So then I interviewed Kendia Johnson. Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she was like, oh, you have to have her on the podcast. I was like, she's on the podcast then. And I was like, I remember her. You know what I'm saying? So it's funny how life comes back full circles when you're remaining who you are. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you for sharing that. You know, what I've learned as I've developed into my womanhood is you don't truly own your power until you own your authenticity.
Okay, you just can't start with that. Just, it's too much too soon. It's too heavy already. That's so true, though. That's true. Do you
Yeah,
think
because
a lot of people are authentic?
no, and I think a lot of people struggle with it, but, you know, I had to put in a lot of work and really getting to know who I was as a person, as a woman, and what I wanted my life to be, and what drove my passion. And it took being vulnerable and owning up to who I was and who I wasn't, and being comfortable with it and not caring what people think.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. When you stop and you're able to freely let go of what other people think about you, that's a freedom, baby, that you will never, ever, ever regret.
A lot of people talk about doing their work. You know, Auntie Youngla always talks about it. Love her. What does that look like?
Doing your work. So I'm going to start with my story
Okay.
because I think that'll help put things in perspective. So both my parents were heroin addicts. And as a result, I suffered the consequences of their addiction. And so my parents broke up when I was very young, 5 or 6 years old. My mom ended up in an abusive relationship with a man she met in rehab. He physically and mentally abused both of us. My dad ended up going to prison for murder. And during that time, you know, I went from a straight A honor roll student to an at-risk youth. I became severely depressed. I had no self-esteem, no self-worth. I was freed from the abuse when my dad came home from prison, only to find out less than a year later that he was dying of AIDS. So I ended up dropping out of high school, robbing a drug dealer, becoming a drug distributor, and I was definitely headed on a path to prison or death. But I knew that heroin was keeping my dad alive, right? And at least I thought it was. And so when he died, I became severely depressed. My mom disappeared, and I ended up attempting suicide and spent 6 weeks in a psych ward. So every day I have to wake up grateful that I'm here now, because I can't imagine my 3 kids not being here, not being married to the husband I have now, and not enjoying the life and career that I've had the pleasure of having. But it took a lot of work. I had to put in the work to change my circumstances, right? I had to learn the process of forgiveness because I was holding on to a lot of baggage, and that freed me up to being loving and accepting relationships. And then I also had to find my faith and understand that I was worthy of the blessings that God had put in my life, and understanding that I had an obligation to give back.
Yeah.
And so that's why everything I do, it comes from a place of service, because I know to whom much is given, much is required.
Mm, that's so good. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a testimony in itself, your story, for sure.
Yeah. So I had to put in the work, to figure out the relationship I had with my mom, which is in my book. I have a book called Protected by Purpose, and it kind of outlines everything I did to get to where I am now. And, I'm proud of the woman I've become, and I celebrate myself as much as I can. That's part of the process
Yeah.
to honor yourself and to celebrate yourself, because a lot of times we get stuck in the hustle and bustle and we don't take the time to say, wow, I accomplished a lot of great stuff and I should be
Yeah.
proud of it.
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
Sitting back in those accomplishments and like, okay. And you could have not did it. It would have been super
Yeah.
easy to procrastinate or just put it off. But you
And
did.
I'm still doing it. I just spent an intensive weekend in a mastermind class. So it was 6 to 11 p.m. at night, Thursday and Friday, and then 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday. And I went in feeling empowered, and there was a lot of things that I knew that I still needed to work on, but I think you owe it to yourself to invest in yourself,
Yeah.
to keep growing and keep learning and keep challenging yourself to really live in your passion and purpose. And that's what I try to do.
That's so good. You mentioned forgiveness. Let's break that down. So, what does it look like to forgive yourself and then forgive other people? What does that look like?
It looks like accepting what you've done in the past, letting go of the feelings of shame and hurt, and understanding that forgiveness is not for other people, it's for you.
Right.
Because when you hold on to grudges, you hold on to bad feelings of anger and resentment, you're only giving the other person power, and they have a power over you. So when you learn to release it, let it go, and forgive them, that doesn't mean that you have to keep them in your life either. You have to make a choice. Is it worth keeping this person in my life, or do I really need to let this person go, forgive them, and move on? So that's what it looks like, and setting standards and boundaries for how people treat you. That's really, really important, because if people don't honor your boundaries and your standards, then you definitely don't want them in your life.
That's so good. Can you give us one of your boundaries?
My boundaries: treat me with respect, um, be honest,
Yeah.
um, and I think honesty is the best one. That's all that I require, and I don't like negativity. If there's something I did to get on your nerves or to bother you, call me out on it. Let's discuss it, because
Yeah.
I've learned that 9 times out of 10, those things are misunderstandings.
Yeah.
But you know what? When I went into this mastermind session over the weekend, I realized that I put in the work to make sure that the people around me are people who uplift and support me, who give me honest feedback, who champion for me. And, because one of the exercises from the class was to evaluate all your relationships and call two people that you need to, fix, the relationship with. And I couldn't think of anyone,
That's
because I put in the work.
that's so good.
Yeah.
Mm. Jewels being dropped. So being bitter is never a personality trait that anybody ever wants to carry. But a lot of times it shows up. Nobody's going to admit to it, but it shows up in our language. It shows up in our thoughts. Um, what would you say to a woman who is trying to release that, but she doesn't even know she has it?
That's hard, because, one of the slogans that I really love is, what do you know about yourself that you're pretending not to know?
Mm,
So if you're in a situation where you're feeling bitter or jealous or angry, what is it about that experience that is driving those feelings? And what part do you have in how you experience that situation?
right.
And that's a hard thing to do, because one, you have to make a choice to step back and really do the evaluation, and to be honest with yourself about what it is, and then put in the work to say, okay, this is not how I want to show up in life. Sometimes you can't help but to react versus to respond, But I think it more often you want to respond, take the time to respond versus react.
Yeah.
And that's a journey because, you know, it takes time to develop the mindset to do that, especially if you have a pattern of reacting versus responding.
Yeah. I think your video went out for a moment.
Okay, there we go.
You're back. That's good. So your book is about, because the SOULKATION brand in general was about purpose, and your book is Protected by Purpose. Is that correct?
Yes, protected by purpose.
So what does that mean to be protected by purpose?
Well, I realized that after, you know, I attempted suicide and, you know, starting a career in a Fortune 50 company on a GED education and making it to the leadership ranks, and being a mother of 3 beautiful children and a grandmother, that God had a different plan and purpose for my life, you know? And so that's why I'm still here. And so I know if you wake up every day, that means that God still has purpose in your life.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what that purpose is, then you're doing yourself a disservice. My pastor preached a eulogy a few weeks ago, and he said the greatest tragedy in life is not knowing your purpose for living.
Yeah.
And it's true.
It
Yeah.
really, really is. Oh, that's so good. Did your kids know your story, I'm sure?
They know it now. It's funny. They didn't know until I wrote the book.
Wow.
Yeah. They knew that my mom struggled with addiction, that my father, you know, died of AIDS and was an addict, but they didn't know that I suffered the physical and mental abuse. They had no idea that I attempted suicide. They didn't know I was a drug dealer. They didn't know any of that. And so writing the book was actually therapeutic. It helped me to tell my story, to share my truth. And it's funny, my daughter, I have 3 children. My daughter's 28 and my 2 sons are 20 and 22. My 2 sons didn't want to read the book based on my daughter's reaction. Because my daughter called me crying, and she was reading on her lunch hour at work, and she called me crying, hysterical. And my sons were like, we don't want to read that.
So what do you think your daughter got out of it?
Her reaction when she called me was based on me attempting suicide and her thinking that I would, you know, what if I wouldn't have been here. But when she finished the book, I think, and what she said to me is that she was proud about how resilient I was and the woman that I turned into, being her mom. So, you know, that made me proud. And I shared my story about her in the book because she graduated from high school, went to college, came home pregnant. That wasn't my plan. And, you know, as parents, there was some judgment and, you know, how could you do that, and hurt. And it turned out to be the biggest blessing in our life, my granddaughter. But I had to get over myself, me and my husband, and learn not to judge, learn that her life is hers and God's plan is his for her life. And, you know, that's something I talk about in the book is the power of judgment and the possibilities that occur when you are judgment free. Because those possibilities turn into opportunity and turn into grace.
That's so good.
Yeah.
It turns into opportunities.
And turn into grace. Yeah.
Oh, that's really, really good. Is there any advice you would give to parents who have teenagers or kids in college? What would you say to them?
Let them live their dreams, right? You know, so, you know, I travel the country and I talk to college students. Actually, I'm launching a campaign that's targeted to Gen Z right now. And I hear from parents and I hear from, you know, younger people when they say, you know, I did all the right things. I went to school because my parents said that's what I had to do. In fact, I just talked to a young woman. She said, I wanted to be a chef. I wanted to go to culinary school. My parents said they wouldn't pay for that. So I went and got a degree in political science. Hated it, you know, the career I ended up in. And so I ended up going back to school, incurring a whole bunch of debt. And now I'm struggling because I realized that I want to pursue my dream. So my advice to parents is let your kids decide what it is and who they want to be in life and support them. And you never know, you know, you never know. It could be great. And it will be great because they're following their purpose.
Yeah. and you don't know it. I mean, we're walking in ours, you know what I'm saying? Even parents are, you know, sometimes it takes them a little bit longer because of the generation before them to be safe, you know, make sure, you know, you're saving and not taking a lot of risk, you know, really. So for the next generation to come and take all the risk, you know, it's kind of hard to balance that conversation a lot of times. But I tell my friends all the time, we need, all the generations need each other. You know, baby boomers are faithful. They are dependable. They're going to show up on time. They're consistent. Their word is their bond. Millennials, we're going to take some risk. We're going to try some new stuff that's scary. You know, you better not come talking to us sideways, you know. But we need each other. I feel like we balance each other out in so many ways. I don't know what we would do without each other, honestly.
It's funny that you reference millennials and baby boomers, because I did some research that found that millennials really and genuinely love the relationships they have with their grandparents and you guys influence each other.
Yeah.
I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm in the middle.
Okay.
But I think my mind and spirit feels like a millennial, but
yeah.
We'll see.
I would agree with that. I mean,
yeah.
You tried several different things. Your resume is pretty extensive in different genres. So yeah.
Yeah. And to your point about risk, you have to take risks and you have to push the boundaries, because that helps to tell you who you are and what you're made of. Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to be surprised about how strong you are, how resilient you are, and what you're capable of. Yeah. It's the difference between good and extraordinary.
Okay, Dorinda, I'm not about to play with you on the SOULKATION podcast. You done hit my soul by 12 times. Okay. So I'm going to do some rapid soul questions. I'm going to ask you just random questions, and the first thing that comes to your mind, just spit it out.
Okay.
Name one person you think is really funny.
One person I think is really funny, I would have to say Steve Harvey. I listen to him in the morning. And nephew Tommy, like, he cracks me up with those pranks.
I really miss the East Coast radio, just strength. We don't have any of that on the West Coast, and I miss it. Gary in the morning, Gary with the tea. I miss all of it. Just, yeah.
And I have to put my husband on that list, because I think that's why we've sustained such a long marriage, because he's hilarious. So he keeps me laughing, keeps a smile on my face.
Last song you listened to?
Show Me Love, Alicia Keys. I can't get that tune out of my head. Like, I'm humming it all day.
I love it. What dessert can't you live without?
I'm not a big dessert eater, but I do have a craving every now and then for cheesecake.
Okay. What trait do you like the most about yourself?
The fact that I can be vulnerable.
That's good.
Yeah, in that class, they had 4 things that you needed to assess about yourself. You need to be right. You need to be in control or not lose control. Oh, I forgot the other 2. But anyway, I said I could do with your ability to avoid pain, or your need to avoid pain. Forgot the 4th one, but I said I could do everything. I could let go of everything else, because I don't need to be right. You know, I know the importance of being vulnerable, but I can't lose control. That's my one pet peeve.
I love that.
Yeah, and I know that about myself.
I have to think about it. You got me over here thinking.
So the other one was caring about how you look and appear to others. I don't care about that anymore. I'm comfortable with who I am.
That is so good. We're going to have to talk about this mastermind after we get off. Anyway, if you could go to dinner with anyone, who would it be?
Barack Obama. I want to know what he thinks about the world today. Actually, him and Martin Luther King. Because I feel like the King legacy, like, we haven't lived up to the dream in this current state. And so I would love to go to dinner with those 2, just to get their perspective on where we are.
That's good. What book do you believe everyone should read?
Protected by Purpose. Because if God did it for me, he could do it for you. Yeah. And I think it will inspire people. It will help people to heal relationships, but most of all, challenge them to lead great and extraordinary lives.
Yeah. What are you looking to do next, and how can we support you as a community?
So my company is Cultural Solutions Group, and we are launching a campaign called Cries Conquered. And CRIE stands for Culture, Racism, Inequity, Equality, and Sexism. And it's all about conquering the cries of Gen Z. I'm targeting age 14 to 24, so high school, college, and entry-level workers, and really tackling a lot of the issues that are causing the high rates of anxiety, suicide, and depression, because it's triple the rate of the boomer and Gen X generation.
Yeah.
So things like social media addiction, student loan debt, gun violence, you name it. And so it's three components to the campaign. There's academic partnerships, there's social media, digital marketing, and then there's cause marketing, where we're asking consumers to donate to organizations that we highlight who are driving solutions towards the issues. And so if you know a young person age 14 to 24, it's all in their voice. You won't see me in the campaign. Have them go to criesconquer.com or dorindawalker.com and get in touch with me, because I'd love to have as many young people as I can in the campaign and expressing their views and their thoughts about these issues.
That's so good. That's so necessary. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And if I have any kids I can think of, I would, of course, send them your website.
Awesome. And I'm going to be doing a photo shoot in New Jersey in February.
Okay.
With the first cohort of spokespeople. We'll be in Dallas in September, and awaiting 2 confirmations from schools. So my plan is to do 3 forums with universities or colleges in the U.S., 1 in Ghana, which will happen in December, and then 1 in the UK.
Okay. Let's work.
Yes.
I'm here for it. Thank you so much for coming on the SOULKATION podcast. This was amazing.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. It was my honor.
Same here.
Make sure you all subscribe to the SOULKATION podcast. Share this episode with your best friend, because Dorinda was dropping so many jewels, so many nuggets. And I'll catch you on the next episode of the SOULKATION podcast. Have a good one.